There we go. I don't think I'm on right now. Am I on? It doesn't look like. Oh, I am on. Holy cow. Am I live right now? Am I just the best? Oh, feels good. Anyways, thank you so much. Sorry about some of these technical difficulties. We are still working on a couple of things. I know that things can go smoother, and today we're not quite getting that frictionless coconut oil smoothness, but hopefully we can get the kinks worked out here shortly. Next up is actually Nicola. I don't know if you've seen the schedule, but right now we're heading into the big talk right now. Nicola lives and works in Novi Sad. I don't know if you know this, but he spreads knowledge to folks through blogging and talking. He likes to build awesome things with mostly JavaScript and Ruby, and he's been using Vim for more than 5 years and couldn't love it anymore. You can check out his blog, The Pragmatic Pineapple, and connect with him on Twitter. Hopefully, we can get the links out to both his blog and his Twitter. And besides for that, if you don't know, Nicola loves the old analog photography and riding motorcycles. And maybe one day he'll make it out here to beautiful South Dakota, where we have the largest motorcycle rally of all time. Hopefully he is ready to come on stage. And if he is, we're good to go. I hope everyone's excited. And please give some plus ones for Nicola. We gotta get him excited. He can't hear the claps. He can't feel the excitement, but he can see the chat. And if you like the JavaScript, you like Ruby, or you like Vim, you may have liked Vim, please give him a welcome. All right.
Hey, do you hear me? Thanks, Primergen.
You can kick me off.
I don't see myself yet on the stage. Just let me know when I'm out there. Okay, the delay, I guess, is expected. Thank you so much, Primergen, for this awesome intro. I hope to come to South Dakota as soon as this COVID start is done. Okay, let me just check one more time. Well, hopefully I'm live. Can someone? Okay, I'm live. Awesome. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to this conference. Thanks for coming to this talk, attending this talk. As you see from the title, today I'm going to tell you more about Vim and how it became so popular used. But before I go into details about the topic, I want to tell you how I came to the idea of this talk. And you know that when you use Vim or NeoVim or whatever Vim-based editor, you mostly move around using AJK and L keys. I mean, not only those keys, right? Vim has other options, but why specifically AJK and L keys? Why not arrows or some other set of keys? For example, why do we have to use colon to call a command? And all these questions got me thinking, and I started to dig around the internet to find some answers. And little did I know is that I would actually stumble upon a bunch of interesting findings along the way. So this talk is actually all about that. It's about those small bits and pieces of Vim's history and how Vim actually came to be. So let's move on. And before we get into the talk itself, I want to introduce myself, even though Primergen did a very good job. I'm Nicola, I come from Serbia. I'm a software engineer and a writer at pragmaticpineapple.com. You can connect with me on Twitter, Nicola LSVK. You can also check out my dot files. As Adam says, everybody loves to show off them VimRC. I'm using Vim for over 5+ years, and I'm actually looking forward to switch to NeoVim and try it out. So I'm definitely going to be looking out for those NeoVim talks later today. You can also read some of the blog posts I wrote on the Vim topic. Anyways, now that we got that out of the way, we can move on. And before I tell you how Vim got so popular, we gotta acknowledge that Vim is still popular these days, right? I mean, just look at the number of attendance at this conference, like 1,000+ attendees here. And let me just check how many people are online here. We have over 450 people online right now. So I think that's pretty cool. But besides all that, there is Stack Overflow survey from 2019 that said that Vim is actually fifth most popular editor out there, and it's actually battling along that spot together with IntelliJ, Sublime Text. We also have, of course, VS Code there. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty nice that uh, it's on the fifth place, considering that's almost 30 years old. Yeah, Vim actually got released in 1991. And to better understand why, how Vim got so popular, it's best to look at the roots of how it all started. And before Vim, there was this thing called VI. And before VI, it was ED. But what are all these 2 or 3 letter words, and what is the story behind all of it? To explain that, it's best to start from the beginning, from the punch cards and line editors era. And before all this cool model editing we have now with Vim, NeoVim, we had to start somewhere. And back in those days, most popular way to talk to computers was to feed them these punch cards. And these punch cards, if you never see them before, they had 80 character limit, and you would punch holes in them by sitting in this punching machine. And what's pretty interesting is you would have people actually work on these punching machines and type the code. You would get like a code with paper and give them out, and they will type. And you would end up probably with a stack like this. This would be your code. Well, maybe not this large, but you would have a decent amount of punch cards. And what you would do, you would feed them to the mainframe computer, these large machines. And what kind of sucked back then is writing code and running it was pretty tedious, because at those large computers, you could only run a single program at once. So this was, people were using punch cards well back into 19th century to program stuff. And they peaked mostly in they peaked their usage in computers around 60s, and they were used well into 21st century. So, but it's all single program at once, and soon running stuff in parallel was about to be invented. And this is actually what happened in late 60s. This concept of time sharing was invented, and that meant that now you can interact with a computer simultaneously. You don't have to wait for your queue. So back in those days, in order to interact with a computer, like an old computer like this photo, PDP-7, you would have to use something called a teleprinter or teletypewriter, whatever you want to call it. And they were calling these things TTYs for short. And basically it's a terminal. And what it was back in the day, it was basically a printer with a keyboard. And you probably ask yourself, why were they printing stuff on paper then? Like, why would you print commands there? Well, the thing is, using video displays at that time, at late 60s, was pretty rare and very expensive. So they had to use these things. And while using these things, these terminals, these teleprinters, these two fine gentlemen actually started building this neat thing called Unix operating system. And they were using the PE7 and this terminal. And while building Unix, Ken Thompson, the guy on the left here, he actually created the first line editor in the Unix system. And what he did is he took one of the first line editors out there, in general, QED, he stripped it down, and he added these regex, which you probably might know. And this was pretty big at that time. So to get a better feeling about what a line editor is and how and that era, we're going to do a live demo. Yeah. So if you're near your computer, or if you have an Android phone with terminal emulators, whatever, you can actually try out the ED editor. It's right there. I'm using Mac, and yeah, you can just type in ED here. And once you get here, yeah, you don't get anything basically, but trust me, you are here, because since this was a line editor and this was all printed out on paper. And let's say we want to write a file, right? we just hit A, which means append. I'm just gonna say something like hello world, hello vimconf.live. We are editing a file inside the ed editor. How nice. Okay, that's enough. And once we're done with writing, we just type in dot, and we do this thing which might look familiar if you're using something Vim based. So we write a file. This is 105 bytes. Nice. And we just quit it with a Q. And if you don't trust me, what just happened, we can open this thing inside Vim. And so here we have it. Let's just add another line from Vim. Okay. And if we want to edit this file again in ED, you see now the number of bytes are changed, 128. And if we want to just print, well, let's say, since this is a line editor, you didn't actually get to see the file you're editing. You would need to say, like, I want to see the first line. Or let's say I want to see the fourth line. And if you wanted to see the whole file, you have to do something like this. $1, and B. And what this does is prints the whole from the first to the last line. And you can do something like this, which might be familiar. You can search for Vim. You can search for editing or OK. Yeah, you get the idea. It's basically similar to Vim. And you can also do this one cool thing, which is, let's say we want to replace hello with hey. And since it's a line editor, we didn't actually see what happened, so we have to print out the whole file. And we just saw that hey got there instead of the hello. And we can do it again, just to be sure. Let's replace hey with hello. Let's print the whole file. Yeah, you can delete the fourth line. You should delete the fourth line. Yeah, and that's basically it. And you see that ED, now we saw ED and that it has more similarities with Vim. We can actually go next because this was pretty nice, pretty similar to Vim. And how between ED came the VI. Between Vim and ED, the VI came. But how did VI happen at all? And what happened is after the ED editor came this EM editor, and it was created by this guy George Coulouris, and he named it Editor for Mortals because it was less cryptic than ED. You see, when you saw in the demo before, we had ED that basically didn't say anything to us. We would make something with some addition or substitute, and you wouldn't see anything. So EM came there to show line edits, like what was going on when you type something. And the thing is with EM, the George who created it, he had access to one of these things, a computer terminal with a display screen. And this is very different from Ken Thompson, who developed ED. He had, paper, Telewriter and paper. So EM, George Coulouris showed M to build Joy. And build Joy at that time, he was so frustrated with ED that he decided to take EM and create X. And while he was working on X, he was so annoyed by ED, and he decided to add something that will change basically everything about editing. He added the visual mode, and he did this in 1978. So maybe 10 years apart from the ED. So 10 years apart from when ED was released, the first version of X was released with BSD Unix. And then actually in the second version in 1979, VI actually got introduced. And what VI did at that time is it basically set some conventions for the future, but it also, it's the place where this AJK and L keys come from. And this is really interesting. If we take a look at how this guy created, we got to take a look at the keyboard Bill Joy used to create the VI-NX. And he used this ADM3A. And if we take a closer look at the keyboard, we will see that instead of the cursor keys, it actually had arrows painted on the A, J, K, and L keys. And this is the reason why he used these keys for the cursor movements. And you can also notice one thing, that escape key is now where the tab key is on our keyboards. And this explains why so many people, I mean, people I know, they remap their escape key to tab. Yeah, and another thing that Bill Joy did with X and VI, he added this column to perform a command. And this was his answer to ED's complete silence when you enter. You know, when we entered ED, like you didn't know if your computer just crashed or something, everything stopped. So in order to write a command, he added a column. And this is what we have today in Vim. In order to have like X mode, you will need to type colon and then type whatever command you want to do. So there you go. You found out why things are the way we use them today. And it's interesting to me that how a choice of the keyboard afflicted so many users today. And I have a question for you, and you can write it in the comments. If you could switch keys for moving around in Vim, what keys would you switch it for nowadays? So write your answer in the chat. So that's how VI came to life. But how we come from VI to Vim? And to understand that, we gotta know that at the time, VI was the only text editor in the BSD Unix. And yeah, Emacs was there, but Emacs was really expensive, and it was still not the time of the open source Emacs. So naturally, VI became enormously popular. And one fact that that's interesting is BSD Unix is actually the base of the most other Unix-based operating systems. And if you take a look here at those two versions where X and V got introduced, they're basically responsible for maybe, I don't know, roughly 50, 60 Unix-based operating systems. So yeah, they all had VI, and yeah, people just got used to it. But since VI was a direct descendant from the ED editor, this meant that VI is proprietary software. And in order to edit VI's code, you had to have an AT&T source license. So this inspired some folks to create open source versions of the VI editor. And the most notable open source versions of VI was this version called Stevie. And Stevie came about 1987. And it somehow reached this guy called Bram Moolenaar. And if you know who Bram Moolenaar is, you probably know what's going to happen next. So Stevie reaches Bram Moolenaar, the Dutch software engineer, through a Fredfish newsletter. And you've got to really realize these are the late 80s, and you don't actually have a GitHub or whatever for open source stuff. And Bram was subscribed to this Fredfish newsletter, which basically shipped out floppy disks with open source software. Or at that time, open source was called shareware. And Fredfish was shipping out floppy disks for Amiga platform. And what Bram had, yeah, you guessed it, he had Amiga 2000. And he got these floppy disks. And since Bram Moolenaar worked with VI so much in the university, he started using Stevie. And what he noticed is that Stevie was missing so many of VI's features. And he decided to create a new editor. So he gets to work, you guessed it, on Vim. He gets to work on it on 1988. And his first, his first feature was to make it backwards compatible with the VI. Other than that, he also added multi-level undo. He had a quick fix mode for errors. And in 1991, he finally released Vim under the name VI Imitation. And if you all know, this is not what it's called today. But do you know what else got released or announced in 1991? Yeah, you guessed it. It's this little guy, Linux. Linus Torvalds announced Linux. So yeah, it was pretty nice year. So VI Imitation was in 1991, and VI became what it is today. VI improved in 1993. And from that point on, Vim was known as VI improved. Bram Lenar, with the help of open source um, collaborators, started working on releases for releases. V3 came in 994. Today we're at 8.2, I think. But yeah, it was pretty nice, and a bunch of new features were added, including Windows, syntax highlighting, all the nice stuff. Then Vim gets ported to Microsoft, to Mac, to Unix, where it got to compete with the original VI editors. So yeah, that's how we came to Vim. But what's going on with Vim these days? As I said from the beginning, Vim is the 5th most popular editor today. Mostly people like it because it's ubiquitous, meaning it's everywhere basically where you can SSH. Others like it because of its speed, being able to customize it. But a lot of people hate it actually, or at least they get stuck in it. And Vim has actually become a meme where one does not simply exit Vim, and we all know this. But the funny thing is that there is a question on Stack Overflow where someone asked how to exit Vim 8 years ago. And I took this screenshot a couple of days ago, and at that time it was viewed 2.2 million times. So that's pretty impressive. So what Stack Overflow did, they did a research about this question in 2017, and it says that the most of the developers that can exit Vim use jQuery and CSS. So might not be that surprising. And the people that mostly get stuck in Vim are from Ukraine, Turkey, and Indonesia. So sorry about that, guy. And at the peak hours of Stack Overflow traffic, there's 80 people per hour that need help getting out of Vim. So that's pretty impressive. And then they say that Vim is not popular. Come on. Yeah. So I found this GIF from Evacuator. It would be funny if someone would actually post this meme on the Stack Overflow as an answer for that question. But yeah, enough with the classic Vim jokes. Yeah, we got plenty of them on the web. I just want to go back to the keyboard Billjoy used to develop X, I mentioned. Yeah, and those keys, AJK and L, they are now embedded in the technology world almost everywhere. And if we take a look at the sites like Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr, and others, they use J and K to move up and down between the posts on there. And how did that happen? You know, if someone knows, I mean, I'd like to know. Maybe that's a story for another time. And not only browsers, almost every editor has a Vim mode built inside it. But anyways, to answer the starting question, how did Vim become so popular? There are various reasons by different people. And obviously, Vim had and has cool features. There is the editing speed, the flexibility, the all-around presence that Vim has that made people use it. But all those features and pros, they actually come from the roots, you know, from the ED and the VI editors. And something that's very important is that caring for compatibility between these editors is what made those good ideas pile up over the 50 years. And this is what happened when Ken Thompson started doing ED. Then Billjoy took and he made sure that it's compatible with, that X and VI are compatible with VI. Bram Molinar did the same thing between VI and Vim. And we have NeoVim's community these days that you can easily switch from vimrc, your vimrc to use NeoVim. So when Billjoy was actually asked whether he thinks he worked on something so world-changing, he said no, and that he constantly underestimates it. So luckily, today, I think we're not underestimating it. I think we know how Vim is good, and I think Vim-based editors have a really bright future. And if we want to talk about the future, yeah, let's just say that as 5th most popular overall, Vim is 2nd most preferred in the Ruby community. What I do, Vim is right now at version 8.2. New additions are planned. The NeoVim community is stronger than ever. So I'd say let's continue. Let's continue what was going on before us. Let's continue the collaboration, the good idea accumulation, and let's make Vim editors even better. And we can do that by supporting each other, attending conferences like this. Big shout out to Adam, to organizers, to everyone, speakers, everyone attending. Yeah, we can write blog posts, we can stream, create videos, we can do all this stuff. And while we are at the topic of streaming and creating videos, there's these awesome folks that are streaming. You can check them out. If you're not watching them already, I'm sorry if I forgot someone. I just took it from the Discord, from our conference Discord. So yeah, let's keep up the good work and let's make Vim-based editors even better. That's it. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the talk. Hope you got to learn something about history behind the world's greatest editor. And yeah, feel free to connect with me on Twitter. Check out my blog, my newsletter. I'm actually planning to write a book, so subscribe to that newsletter. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you. Thank you so much.